Hello and welcome to My Woolly PhD, episode 24, I think so, 24th week of the PhD. My name is Liz Scarf and this is a weekly vlog about what I'm currently learning and making in my PhD in anthropology that's all about wool. If you want to get a picture of sort of an overview of the whole project, you can check out the introductory video this week. So I'm a bit late with the video this week because I went away on the weekend for a little bit of hiking in central Victoria, not Central Australia. That would more than a weekend trip. Anyway, it was lovely, but it means I'm late with the video. Anyway, it's now 21 days until I get on a plane to Iceland for my first fieldwork trip. Now, I've never been to Iceland, but the number of people who've told me how wonderful it is after they spent a week there 20 years ago, it's hilarious. It's quite a thing. Like when anybody says, oh, it's beautiful, I start thinking, I wonder how many decades ago they were there. But I do also have supervisors and colleagues who've been there more recently. Love it, can't wait to go back. So anyway, I'm nervous about it, of course. It's very new, but I'm spending a lot of time trying to get organised for something that's quite unknown, trying to work out what I'll need, what I don't, what I can fit in my bag. But this week I've also been thinking about textile waste, which it's not particularly, it's a bit depressing, so hold on to your hats. One particular article of interest, I'm not going to actually refer to this a lot, but it's called Mountains of Waste and Wasted Mountains, Clothes, Sheep and People in Modernising Iceland by Ágústa Edwald Maxwell. A really interesting social archaeology paper looking at archaeological remains around textiles in Iceland, and then also linking this to modern textile waste issues in Iceland, particularly, of course, they're exporting the textile waste, as many countries, or wealthy countries, are. Anyway, I really recommend that one. There's another thing I wanted to recommend if you're interested in textile waste, that it's not anthropology, but it's called the Clotheshorse Podcast, and I'll put the link in the notes. It's super excellent. It's all about the fashion industry, made by Amanda Lee McCarty, who used to work in the buying departments of some of the most iconic sort of fast fashion brands, and particularly episode 183. It's called Why Most New Sweaters Are Near Future Garbage, and it's super interesting if you're a knitter and if you're contemplating or you do knit sweaters. Anyway, I think it's a really, really great podcast, but if you're only going to listen to one episode and you love to knit, I'd listen to that one. And if you do have a few bucks to spare, she kind of is trying to run the podcast through people supporting the work, so I think it's a really great place to put some money if you've got some. And otherwise, spread the word if you really like the podcast too. I think it's really, it's quite the education in textile waste as it relates to fast fashion. Anyway, so waste. So one way to define waste is that it's a byproduct of systems. And the waste crisis we're experiencing globally, right, it's primarily a byproduct of high growth capitalist systems, right? So kind of piece it together bit by bit. It's not necessarily as logical a progression of thinking or concepts as it could be. But so waste happens, there's one idea about it, right? Waste happens when more resources are produced than are needed. So let's say I make more popcorn than I can eat. I've produced waste. I'm not going to eat that most of the time. Or a failure to utilise available resources, right? So like when I, along with many thousands of Australians, throw out or compost floppy celery, right? So it's a resource I have there that I fail to utilise. It's another way in which something turns into waste that wasn't waste before. And this isn't just at an individual level, right, in terms of our own lifestyle practices. Manufacturing and other large commercial and non-commercial enterprises actually are regularly creating more than they need and throwing away perfectly good stuff that's just excess to requirement. That they either won't make the effort to rehome or they can't. Nobody else wants it. So it's a huge issue and very much entangled with how capitalism views nature, right? So nature is either a place to extract things, wanted things from, or it's a place to deposit unwanted things, so waste, right? And the pace in which things move from extraction to deposit, so taking them out of some nature place and then dumping them, right? The pace of that movement relates to economic systems driven by sort of growth philosophies or theories. And so in sort of fast, high growth systems like capitalism, we tend to see an increasing speed from extraction to deposit, and that this is supposedly a good goal, right? This efficiency of the cycle. Now, I don't think all of this is how anthropologists would define waste, because anthropologists would go, oh, it's very culturally dependent and constructed and complex, and that's really, really true. And if we're talking about textile waste, I'm also going to kind of go with it as just a base level idea. We have to have some kind of definition sometimes, but let's also say waste is really a complex and interesting concept. Now, if we're thinking about, and I'm going to come back to a little bit about what anthropology, some of the ways anthropology explores it, but fast fashion is a really excellent example of these fast and increasingly fast cycles from extraction to depositing. And it is the primary factor in the global textile waste crisis that we're in, including little Iceland, right? So Iceland has a really big textile waste problem. So it's estimated about 7 tonnes of textile waste is produced in Iceland every day. That's like a really, really large African elephant, or like a big school bus. It's 2,000 to 3,000 tonnes of textile waste a year, a population of about 380,000 people, right? So over 200 tonnes are exported per month, and at least 40% of that it's unusable and it's just burnt. Less than 10% of it can be either sold secondhand, which is a kind of a form of a waste market, or it can go for humanitarian aid, but it's not much. And so the estimate is that Nordic countries generally are buying around 48 garments per person per year, new garments, right? Now, this isn't particularly to name and shame Iceland, because actually they're not the worst. It's quite possibly here in Australia we might be the worst. The stats do seem to be a bit all over the place, and they look like they change quite quickly. But at the moment, one of the ones I was looking at sort of claims that we buy on average 56 items of new clothing every year, which is 3 times more than, not 3 times more, sorry, 3 more than those in the US. But also the average cost of the items we're buying is $13, which is lower than in the US, the UK, Japan and Brazil. And so this does sort of point to, like, we've got a particular problem with fast fashion in Australia, but kind of we do globally in terms of in wealthy countries, right? Now the urge to fix and look for fixes for the waste problem is like, it's very compelling, it's a really good idea, but academics also suggest there's a lot to learn through studying waste that would help address not only the waste issue, but also many of the issues that are connected with notions of economic growth and progress. The term garbology has emerged to describe the study of waste, and in anthropology we have the anthropology of waste. And it's super fascinating, but as usual, in my first year of the PhD, 6 months in, I don't really know much about it. I super recommend go do your own Google searching or Google Scholar searching too, right? Anthropology of waste. But there are so many ways that anthropologists are exploring notions of waste. I thought, like, I had a list of about 25, and I just thought, I can't just read a list of 25 things out on a video. So one thing, I just picked something that I thought was a bit of an overarching area of kind of interest that anthropologists look at, is using waste as a lens for understanding power and culture and inequality. And it turns up in many ways. Ways in which waste is a sign of affluence as well, right? It's like the wealthier you are, the more you can afford to throw away or not take care of. And also the way waste work is seen as stigmatised labour, and stigmatised across gender, class, caste. But, you know, if you work with waste in recycling, it's a stigmatised form of labour. But also waste colonialism and waste racism in the way in which wealthy countries or the global north, right, we actually export a lot of our waste to the global south for it to be dumped in other people's countries and pay them not very much for it. So we don't have to look at it, we don't have to deal with it, and we don't have to kind of house it in our own countries. So there's a way in which that's a kind of colonial and racialised practice as well. So going and looking at waste and how it moves can sort of highlight different dynamics globally and also but in local spaces. So I'm really interested, actually I'm surprised, I'm really interested in textile waste and waste in general, but textile waste in the context of Iceland and other countries. I was a bit surprised by that. But anyway, so the textile waste problem globally, but particularly globally, including Iceland, it's predominantly attributed to fast fashion. I haven't come across anything about particular drivers of fast fashion in Iceland, how they are the same or different to the drivers in other wealthy countries. But some of the concepts in anthropological literature that I was coming across that were sort of exploring or explaining the drivers of fast fashion included this one called liquid modernity. And this is this idea that we're using clothes as a vehicle for constant identity change and experimentation, significantly to get traction on social media. Right? So we're trying to get attention by changing our look a lot rather than having a consistent appearance or self-expression through clothing over time. Also that disposability has come to be equated with freedom. Right, so instead of valuing durability and quality construction, we're now valuing freedom and this idea that, I can just get rid of it and, I can bring it into my life and then throw it away because, that makes me really free, is another way to kind of explore drivers behind fast fashion. Another one is it's a way to leverage what they call global supply chains that exploit labour arbitrage. So this idea that the wage differentials between, let's say, developed and developing nations, I don't love the terms, but so countries where the wage cost is really low, go and produce all your stuff there, you don't have to pay people very much, but then you take it, you go sell it somewhere else where the labour costs are quite high, and so people's cost of living and their cost of clothing, it's quite high, so you can sell the products at a much higher price in those other countries. So clothing is a no-brainer in terms of taking advantage of these kind of global supply chains. Another one is it's quite interesting, it's all interesting, but the democratization of fashion trends. So it used to, pre-social media, maybe pre-internet, it was really the fashion elite that directed and dictated and influenced how fashion went. But particularly social media, now anyone can be a trendsetter if you kind of put some effort into it. You don't need to be a skilled fashion designer. And this is kind of seen as a collapse of cultural capital distinctions. So luxury aesthetics become accessible to broader populations just through these sort of cheaper reproductions, but also the capacity to try to influence and set trends and influence the fashion market. And I would sort of say this doesn't really belong in anthropology. I kind of pick this up from recent readings I've been doing, not really in my studies, but about dopamine and looking at sort of dopamine addiction and compulsion processes in the culture, right? And the way in which fast fashion is absolutely part of cheap dopamine hits. So the way in which we're certainly in, let's say, wealthier countries, progressively our, let's say, neurochemistry is being wired for short attention spans, quick, immediate, cheap dopamine hits on a really regular basis, buying new stuff, having a new thing to wear, going out and getting compliments on it, whatever else, and then doing the new thing, right? This is all kind of cheap dopamine hits. We pay for it a lot. There's 2 books if you're really interested in the dopamine thing. Dopamine Nation. What's her name? Anna? No. Okay, I haven't got a name. Dopamine Nation. The other one is called Diet, drugs and dopamine. Partway through that one. Anyway, Dopamine Nation I thought was particularly good. The other one's okay too, especially if dopamine related to food is of interest to you. So anyway, I'm off track. Let me get back on track. Now, when I also start thinking about this within the knitting scene, right, there's this idea that knitting your own garments is part of slow fashion, and I think that can be really true. But we're also susceptible to over-consuming, and not just cheap acrylic yarns, which are made from petroleum, they're plastics, right? Like many of the garments sort of produced in fast fashion are synthetic. Synthetic means petroleum, right? But also superwash wool. So I'm going to just jump somewhere else for a moment and come back to superwash too, right? But these connect. So Amanda from this podcast, she makes the point that the best place to start if you want to address your own engagement in textile overconsumption is to start with your laundry practice and looking at how you can really take care of what you already have. Now, this is where superwash yarns come in because they're popular because theoretically you can throw them in the washing machine and they won't felt. You don't have to hand wash them. Super quick and easy and convenient, right? Similar with fast fashion things, you can all go in the washing machine, except they won't wash very well. They will kind of look scrappy really quickly. But I think superwash garments also don't go so well over time. But anyway, but a lot of people don't know that the process of superwashing is basically washing the wools in super toxic acids that remove all the little spiky bits, fibre bits along the outside of the wool, and then coating the fibre in very thin plastic. Now, it is so toxic, the Environmental Protection Agency in Australia doesn't allow it here. You can't superwash wools in Australia because it's so toxic, right? So we ship our wool to China for superwashing and let their country deal with the pollution of superwashing, right? It's so depressing. This is a certain kind of colonialism. I mean, it's a few things, right? But anyway, it's not great. So do superwash yarns belong to fast fashion? A bit, maybe. I don't know. I just think it's really interesting. I think my point, if I have a point, it's that knitting is actually really complex ethically and environmentally and psychologically, and that we're not exempt from the drivers of fast fashion either. Novelty, power, image representations and performances, it's all happening in knitting cultures as well, right? So just because it takes a really long time to knit a sweater, it doesn't immediately locate us in the moral kind of high ground of slow fashion. So I don't know, anyway, it's got me thinking a lot about the sort of narratives around ethics and values and environmentalism within knitting. Knitting cultures is not one knitting culture, of course, but yeah, anyway, it's making me think a lot about that. So that's what I've been thinking about this week. What have I been making? I've got some exciting news this week, actually. I better stop for a drink. So I've been still working on my Faerdy vest. It might not look like a lot of progress since last time, actually, but I have now separated and out for the steeking stitches and the sleeves, and when I restarted the pattern on one side on the front, I got it wrong. I got it all out by one colour stitch, and so when I discovered that, I had to go through and repair them all with a little crochet hook. It was really tedious, and I did it and I'm very proud. Anyway, so now I can just kind of truck along. I think that was a slightly more complicated bit. I haven't steeked before, so it was all a little bit new. So feeling on track with getting that done before I leave. And I finished one of the leg warmers for my daughter. They're the same as the ones I made, except not quite as wide, because the ones I've made, they've stretched quite a bit. I think this will be good. Started the second one. Anyway, that's a boring, but it's satisfying. And I have to say, I'm not sure if I ever owned leg warmers in my life. If I did, I don't remember. I cannot believe how amazing leg warmers are. Everyone should be wearing leg warmers. I gotta say, winter, Melbourne, people, get some leg warmers, not some fast fashion ones. Learn to knit. This would be a great knitting project. A bit boring, but a first knitting project, leg warmers. I cannot tell you how much they have transformed my warmth factor. So just I'm a big advocate for leg warmers. Now, and actually I met someone on the train the other day, sat down, got my knitting out, and then I noticed she was kind of scrolling on Instagram, and I saw her watching a knitting video. I just thought, well, that's interesting. And then she gets her knitting out. Anyway, so we had a good chat, and I did try to promote leg warmers to her, and she said, well, where do you wear them? I was like, lifted up my pant leg, and I just went, under my jeans, sometimes over my leg, my tracky pants at home. Anyway, so I'm on the campaign to promote leg warmers. Get into it, folks. What else have I been doing? Oh yeah, still holding strong on my decision not to go to Bendigo. That's actually settling in. Will be quite good. It won't change unless somebody offers me a paid gig cuddling lambs. Chances of that are really low, so let's assume I'm not going. My exciting making news though this week is that I got my colours done. Now I'm so awkward about this, right? So I've been thinking about this for about a decade and have never really been able to justify the cost. It's just such an incredibly privileged, bougie middle-class woman thing to do, right? And I just morally haven't been able to let myself do it. Except what got me over the line was all the garment knitting that I've been doing and starting to do, and will keep doing. And the number of times I have knit things that I like the colour of the wool on the shelf, but that actually don't look good on me. And so then I don't wear them, or I have to do something else with them. And the money and the time that I've kind of wasted doing this kind of finally got to me. And I was sick of just like going, I don't know, does this look good on me? Like some things I know, like that's a good colour for me. Other things I go, oh, it's not great, but I don't really know why. Anyway, so I got my colours done by the lovely Jessica at Colour U in Melbourne. It's a free promo. She was really lovely, really non-judgmental when I bought out my 15-year-old little scrappy blusher thing and there was barely anything there, and she just went, oh, this is a great colour for you. Oh, look, you can get a refill. And anyway, she's lovely. Highly recommend that. But I was somewhat on track with my colours, but it really helped me get clear on what looks good, what looks okay, what looks wretched, and it's very relaxing. Doesn't mean I can't wear whatever I want, I can, but I don't have to worry anymore, is this colour going to suit me or not? So I have to say, I'm a big advocate for it now. It is still a totally privileged, bougie thing to do, but I do think if you're aesthetically oriented and you're knitting a lot for yourself and you're also like, I keep knitting things that don't look good, I do recommend either do a bit of research yourself and see if you can narrow it down or go see someone. Anyway, after that, I started thinking about the things that I had knit that actually aren't my colour and had this great revelation. I don't know why it was such a revelation because I've already done it once, is that I could just dye some of them. And then I thought about all the yarn in my stash that I have also bought that are not really my colours, that I could also just dye, because I'd been thinking, oh, they're not my colours, I'll give those away, what will I do with them, blah, blah. I thought I could just try dyeing them too, actually. So I only have brown wool dye. And I thought, oh, I've already got some brown things. And then I went, oh, Liz, you could buy another dye or two. So anyway, I bought a couple of more dyes in the red and green direction yesterday, so they'll be arriving. Then I'm going to start dyeing some stuff. Now, one of the things that I did already do, right, is this cardigan I'm wearing, it's so great, by the way. It's the Intasha Reset by Lily. It's got pockets and the whole thing is seamless, a great saddle shoulder. Anyway, the back is supposed to be one colour, the arms are another colour, the front is a third colour. These are the colours that I picked at the store to do it. Yes, they go really well together. None of them are a good colour for me, actually. They're all too bright or too pale. And so after I made it, spent all those hours making this fantastic sweater, I was like, oh, I'm not really going to wear it much because I actually don't like the colours on. So then I dyed it. Didn't do a great job of the dye, but it was good enough for a beginner, and I definitely wear it. So then I started thinking, okay, well, what else have I made that I might dye? And I had decided I was going to dye this when I wasn't kind of holding it and looking at it. When I was away on the weekend, I thought, I'll dye that grey vest. I'm not sure now, right? So I made this vest from, it's mostly a BFL and Hebridean blend that I bought in Stornoway in the Outer Hebrides a few years ago from the woman whose croft she like raises the sheep on. So it's got a lot of sentimental value and provenance to it, right? So now that I'm holding it, I'm like, I'm not sure I can dye it because there is a risk that the dyeing won't come out well. I don't have any left to swatch it. So I don't know. I was thinking maybe a dark green over this. If you do have any experience dyeing, I would love your thoughts. They're cool greys. Most greys are cool colours. I'm not a cool colour person. It's not a great colour on me, but I don't know. I still wear it because I quite love it. But I think maybe I'd wear it a lot more if it was a colour that I also really loved. Should I dye it? I don't know. Anyway, not sure about that one. I had decided to make myself a balaclava with these, like holding them together, because the pattern I have is, I think, for a 10 ply. Yeah, this is a 2 4s and a 2. So I thought, oh, that'd be nice. Got my colours done. I'm like, that's too pale. This one I might live with, blended in, but these two I was thinking, oh no, I should dye these darker. Like in the red direction, I think will go okay. This is a little bit purpley. I'm not good with blue bases. Anyway, so I think I'm definitely going to experiment dyeing those and then try and knit all that up into the balaclava that'll turn out to be something sort of more deep red. And then I have, I love these. They're lovely colours. They're not my colour. And this one I've put in a bowl already. They're all too pale. These are Tatlock yarns, hand-dyed yarns in Australian colours and Australian wool. Beautiful ultrafine merino. They feel really lovely. I'm never going to knit anything with these that I will wear close to my face. And then I'm just like, I have no idea what I'm going to make with them. I've owned them over a year, I think. And so I was thinking maybe I could dye them. Maybe I might put maybe a bit of a darker green over the whole of this. Maybe a brown or red, dark over this. I don't know what I'd do with this. Maybe brown, maybe go this with red. Anyway, I'm not sure. It is all, with these I can just dye a little bit and see. So I can test with those. That's good. I don't really know much about dyeing. So if you've got any hot tips about dyeing already dyed wool or anything, I would love to hear them. I'm going to be taking some risks. But anyway, I think I'm going to try and do a few of those before I go away. This shawl, I love this shawl. Actually not my best colours, but I don't think I'm going to touch it. I think I'm just going to leave it and wear it and just enjoy it anyway, because I think A, I don't have any left over to test dye with, and B, it is really lovely. So anyway, I think that's my next escapade, is dyeing some things to be more in colours that look much better on me than some of the ones I've done. And I've knitted things that I've just had to give away because I'm just like, oh, I can't wear this. It's not going to go with anything I have. It doesn't really look very good. So not that I don't mind giving stuff away, but yeah, it's a bit disappointing. Anyway, so that's what I've been making this week. I think by next week I'll hopefully have that leg warmer finished, maybe a bit more work done on that Faerdy. Yeah, thanks for listening and thanks for your thoughts in the comments, and yeah, I'll see you next week.